Nana Shastra Vicharanai Kanipana Sadharma Samstapaka Lokanam Hitakalino Tribhuvane Manyo Sharanya Karo Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajana Nandena Mataliko Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the six Goswamis, namely Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus they're honored all over the three worlds, and they're worth taking shelter of because they're absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadeshatarane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchkapatarubhyas cha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki, Srila Bhakti Swami Maharaj ki. Yes, so devotees, here we are again. Thank you for coming. And we are now going to at least begin the study of chapter 16 of the Nectar of Devotion, spontaneous devotional service further described. Yes. So we'll see if we can finish this chapter this evening. If not, it's okay. We're going to be having discussions for the rest of the week. So it's a very important chapter, and let's try and do it nicely so we all really grasp what it's all about. So we discussed the other couple of days, we discussed about Rag Atmik Bhakti, Rag Atmik devotional service, the devotional service, the mood of the inhabitants of Vrindavan, the eternal associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. And they are the most advanced of all. And their devotional service and their mood, their consciousness is the most advanced of all. In fact, they are so deeply attached to the Lord. And practically, we even use the word obsessed. It's not a nice word, but it gives an idea at least. They're just completely overwhelmed with attraction to Krishna in terms of their different rasas. So the gopis are just completely absorbed in love for Krishna, meaning just overwhelmed with the desire to serve and please Krishna in the conjugal mood. Whereas the parents, the strength of their attraction and attachment, or the term is their rag, is not as strong as the gopis, but still it's very strong. So they are just so overwhelmed with the mood of serving Krishna as his parents. And then his friends, the cowherd boys, they're just completely absorbed, overpowered with that mood of service as friends. And as we mentioned the other days, that mood is so strong, that love is so strong. The desire to please and serve Krishna in terms of the relationships, whichever relationship the particular devotee is in, so strong that they forget Krishna's God. And like Radharani and the gopis, they see Krishna just as the most wonderful boy. So it's sort of like, he's sort of like a boyfriend, you could say. But the thing is, the mood is to simply please and serve Krishna. So, yes, so that was what we were discussing the last couple of days, more or less. How those devotees in Vrindavan, they love Krishna so much that they forget he's God. And it even applies to not all the devotees, but many of the devotees in Dwaraka, like the queens. They also see Krishna generally as their husband. But there's it's little more formal. And then you come down to Vaikuntha, and they don't have that mood at all. They see Krishna as the Lord. They worship him in a very formal way, in awe and reverence. But those devotees in Vrindavan, their mood is very informal, like friends, obviously, or lovers, or parents to children. It's a very informal mood of love. So now we're going on to chapter 16, which is now, what it is about is Raganuga sadhana bhakti. That's what it's about. Raganuga, the service of those devotees who want to become like the devotees in Vrindavan. They want to go to Goloka Vrindavan and serve Krishna in those types of ways. But they have to learn. So therefore it's called Rag Anuga. Learning how to render service to the Lord, following the rag of the devotees of Vrindavan, or maybe some in Dwaraka, like we said, but it's really very, very particularly, at least 90%, it's about the devotees in Vrindavan. So, yes, it happens. Well, let's read the first paragraph here. I mean, under eligibility, because this is where the chapter really begins. As we mentioned, the little bit at the top about relationship, somehow or other that got left over from the previous chapter, because that's about the Rag-atmic devotees, like Nanda Maharaj, Mother Yashoda, and their Rag for Krishna as parents. So that belongs in the previous chapter. So now where it says eligibility for spontaneous devotional service, this is where the subject of Raganuga, imperfect devotees who are practicing and learning, but they have this attraction. They want to serve like the devotees in Vrindavan, but they have to learn. So let's read the first paragraph. Persons desiring to follow in the footsteps of such eternal devotees of the Lord as the Vrishnis and Vrindavan denizens are called Raganuga devotees, which means that they're trying to attain to the perfection of those devotees. These Raganuga devotees do not follow the regulative principles of devotional service very strictly, but by spontaneous nature, they become attracted to some of the eternal devotees, such as Nanda or Yashoda, and they try to follow in their footsteps spontaneously. There's a gradual development of the ambition to become like a particular devotee, and this activity is called Rag-anuga. That kind of says it pretty clearly, in a nutshell, what is Raganuga? That somehow someone becomes attracted. Prabhupada says here, maybe Nanda Maharaj, let's just say Nanda Maharaj, for the sake of an example, someone just becomes attracted. They're not perfect. They're still practicing devotees. But they become very attracted that, oh, this Nanda Maharaj is such a wonderful devotee, and the ways in which he serves Krishna and his relationship with Krishna, it is just so wonderful. I'd like to serve Krishna in that type of way. Not that I want to take over from Nanda Maharaj, but just that type of way, that parental way. So as Prabhupada says, there's a gradual development of the ambition to become like a particular devotee. And this activity is called Raganuga. So now, there's a few background points we have to consider here. Like, from where does this attraction, like in this case with Nanda Maharaj, from where does this attraction arise? What is the root of it? Because the idea is, I want to go to Goloka Vrindavan and serve Krishna something like Nanda Maharaj. Means become an associate of the Lord in Goloka Vrindavan. So where is it coming from? Someone is attracted to become like Nanda Maharaj. Someone else is attracted to become like the gopis, one of the gopis. Someone else is attracted to become like Sudama, for example, or Subal, one of the cowherd boys. From where's it coming? Is it just sort of coming? Because we have to remember, it is going to end up, the conclusion is going to be in Goloka Vrindavan, in that sort of body, like if it's Nanda Maharaj is the one who interests you, you're going to end up in a sort of middle-aged male body, a family man. You probably may at least have some children there and a wife, and that's going to be it eternally. So where does it come from? Does it just come from the mind, just sort of out of nowhere, other than just being interested? No. And this is a very important point. There's a verse in Caitanya Charitamrita, famous verse, the number of which I don't have, but it goes, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunoi Shravan Adi Shuddha Chitte Karaye Udoi. Pure love for Krishna is eternally established in the hearts of the living entities. It is not something to be gained from another source. When the heart is purified by hearing and chanting, this love naturally awakens. So what does this mean? It means all of us, each one of us already has an eternal relationship with Krishna. As the verse says, that this love, this loving relationship is not to be gained from another source. It's eternally there in the heart already, even though now we are not aware of that, but it's there. So, as we practice, as the verse says, Shravan Adi, as we begin practicing Krishna consciousness, and we continue, we just practice Krishna consciousness. Shravan Adi means beginning with hearing. Shravan means to hear, and Adi means first. Govindam Adi Purusham. We sing every day in the deity greeting that we worship Lord Govinda, who is the Adi Purusha, the first person, the original person. So this Krishna Prema, Sadhya, eternally is within. And Shravan Adi, when we render service beginning with hearing, then Shuddha Chitte, the heart becomes purified, and Karaye Udoi, that love rises in the heart, and one becomes aware of it. So, in other words, what is being talked about here is that as a devotee progresses through Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, then, well, in fact, Srila Prabhupada makes the point in Narada Bhakti Sutra's verse 3 purport. Prabhupada says, at the stage called asakti, attachment, a person can understand his relationship with the Supreme Lord. When he understands his position, he begins reciprocating with the Lord, means in those ways. So asakti, I don't know if you remember, but in terms of the different levels of advancement, first of all, there's Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anatha Nivritti. Then Nishta, steadiness. Now you're beginning to make some advancement. On the other levels, it's all prone to instability. But when you come to Nishta, then stability really comes. And then when you're serving the Lord in very stable and focused ways, then comes ruchi or taste. And then when your devotional service is like that, then you really develop an attachment to the Lord. That's called asakti. And the next stage is bhava, which is the beginnings of love of God. Bhava is no longer in the realm of sadhana bhakti, the practice of devotional service or imperfect devotional service. Bhava is the beginnings of the realm of perfect devotional service. So therefore, when a devotee becomes advanced enough in Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, then whatever is his or her eternal relationship with Krishna will become apparent. One will become aware. And then, devotees, this is the thing. If your eternal relationship with Krishna is particularly in Goloka Vrindavan, maybe in Dwaraka, but let us focus on it being more likely to be in Goloka Vrindavan, then a real attraction to serving the Lord in that way will manifest. And then Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti can start in that, as we read, that they become attracted to some of the eternal devotees, such as Nanda or Yashoda, and they try to follow in their footsteps. Yeah, become like them. Not become them, but become like them. Serve the Lord like that particular devotee does. Now, we must mention a very important point, that if your eternal relationship with Krishna is not in Goloka Vrindavan, but is in Vaikuntha, maybe you're one of Lord Ram's associates, maybe you're one of the monkeys, friends of Hanuman, something like that. That means a Vaikuntha relationship where there is awe and reverence. There is not that spontaneous, dramatic urge to serve the Lord very informally. So then you will continue on in Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti until you reach Bhava, the beginning of perfection, and then you'll continue in the same way up to Prema. Is that point clear? Is that point clear, or is it a little vague? Well, you're the expert, so it's okay. All right. So, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So Achyuta Gotra Prabhu, one of our Brahmins here, devotees. Oh, really, it's a fact. It's a fact. He's asked an important question, which we are asked, when we discuss this subject. It's not an unusual question. That if, in that, as one is progressing through the higher levels of sadhana bhakti, of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, and at some point one becomes aware, I have such and such eternal relationship with the Lord, but it is in Vaikuntha. It's not a Vrindavan relationship, so it doesn't have this rag. It's a very respectful, formal relationship of deep love. Yes, it's nothing to be taken lightly at all. So can one change? Well, the possibility exists to change. but it's very rare. And the reason that it's very rare is a very important reason, is that generally when a devotee enters into or starts approaching their eternal loving relationship with Krishna, then they become extremely happy, extremely happy. We cannot imagine the happiness they feel. So they don't feel like, oh no, I'm only in Vaikuntha. Oh gosh, something like that. Prabhupada gave an example to illustrate sort of the situation and how they feel. Prabhupada gave the example of having a few like cups or glasses for holding liquid. So someone has this size glass, someone has a bigger one, and someone has a bigger one. So of course, as they get bigger, there's more in them, obviously. But still, even the small one, when it's full, it's full. Yeah. And if you try and put more in, it won't work because it's full. So in that sense, it's very rare. Otherwise, you'd have a mass exodus from Vaikuntha. We're all going to Goloka, billions and zillions of them, but they don't. They stay in Vaikuntha because it's like that. Yeah, that's the basic understanding. Aha. All right. So therefore, at some point, well, as we go through the chapter, we'll see that to come to this level, it demands more or less to be really quite advanced. It's not just like you or me, your sort of average devotee is just going to be able to suddenly switch into trying to develop that sort of relationship, a raganuga relationship. You can't do it like that. And in fact, as we go through the chapter, we'll see there's discussion about people who artificially try to become like gopis or like cowherd boys or whatever. But before they've reached that point of actually understanding their relationship. So there's a few verses here spoken by Lord Caitanya thank you very much, Krishna Charan Prabhu. It's spoken by Lord Caitanya to Sanatana Goswami in the 22nd chapter of the Madhya Lila, and that is where Lord Caitanya is explaining these things which are now appearing in Nectar of Devotion from Lord Caitanya to Sanatana Goswami to Rupa Goswami. So here we will find out some of the important elements which are there in Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. Just listen to this. Well, you could make a note, if you like, that these verses, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 22, beginning with verse 156. Madhya Lila 22, 156. And we'll just read a few verses which are describing this whole phenomenon of the awakening of a realization, an understanding that I have that sort of relationship. But, I've been in this world so long, I've got to get trained up so I can enter into the relationship properly. So therefore, I have to follow a devotee who is already in such a relationship. So here we go. And Mahaprabhu Kripa you've got all these in Russian. I sent them to you. When an advanced, realized devotee, note that, realized devotee, they have realization. It's not a speculation or just a sentimental attraction. It's a realization of reality about their own nature. So when an advanced realized devotee hears about the affairs of the devotees of Vrindavan in the mellows of Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya, he becomes inclined in one of these ways, and his intelligence becomes attracted. Indeed, he begins to covet that particular type of devotion. Covet means really, like hold onto. When such covetousness is awakened, one's intelligence no longer depends on the instructions of scripture or on logic and argument. In other words, the attraction is not just on the basis like, yes, well, why am I chanting Hare Krishna? Because I've read that I'm an eternal spirit soul. I'm the eternal servant of Krishna. Chanting is the process for this age. Therefore, I'm chanting. This now, it doesn't really depend on those types of arguments. It depends more just on the natural attraction. I want to be like that. There are two processes by which one may execute this Raganuga Bhakti, external and internal. When self-realized, and again note that, when self-realized, having realized who you are, but you're not quite there yet, but you know it. So when self-realized, the advanced devotee externally remains like a neophyte and executes all the Shastric injunctions, especially those concerning hearing and chanting. But within his mind, in his original, purified, self-realized position, he serves Krishna in Vrindavan in his particular way. You understand? He serves Krishna 24 hours a day, all day and night. Yeah. So there's external practice and internal. External means, as the verse says, Lord Caitanya says, that this advanced devotee externally remains like a neophyte. And they chant their rounds and follow the principles and read the books and so on and so forth, all these types of things. But internally, the person is serving Krishna in terms of what has been revealed, that his or her relationship is as a certain type of devotee in Goloka Vrindavan. But in order to do that, they serve under the direction internally. This is all meditation. This is internal. What now? Yeah, it's the same one. Well, it's not frozen on my one because it's the same thing. How are you doing? Cutting off all the time. What can I do? No sound. Oh, and now it's interrupted. Well, what to do? There's a steady stream of data. Okay. Let us try. Let us try. For 5 minutes. After 5 minutes or a couple of minutes, let's just reevaluate. Oh, well, they say it's okay now. All right, so here we are. There we were. Aha. Oh, yeah. So externally, like the 6 Goswamis, they were strict sadhakas. They were chanting their rounds. Studying the books, doing service, dressed as regular devotees, you could say. Internally, they were meditating on their eternal relationships with the Lord. Internally, not externally. So such a person does not start acting, if they feel they have a relationship as a gopi, for argument's sake. They don't, if it's a man, they don't dress up as gopis. No, they're like normal devotees, but internally they may be serving like that. So here's another verse. And here's the Sanskrit. It's interesting. It's very nice. Seva sadhaka rupena, siddha rupena chatrahi, tadbhava lipsuna karya, vraja lokanusarata. So here, Lord Caitanya is talking about 2 forms. Rupa, of course, meaning form. Seva, rendering service, sadhaka rupena, in the form of a sadhaka, means regular practicing devotee. But siddha rupena, chatrahi, in the perfect form, siddha meaning perfect, in the eternal form, serving in terms of the eternal relationship. So let me read the translation. The advanced devotee who's inclined to spontaneous loving service should follow the activities of a particular associate of Krishna's in Vrindavan. He should execute service externally as a regulative devotee, as well as internally from his self-realized position. Thus he should perform devotional service both externally and internally. So here, 2 forms are mentioned. One is the sadhaka rupa, and the other is the siddha rupa. The form as a sadhaka means just a regular practicing devotee, but siddha means perfect, the perfect form. Of course, the devotee here is practicing. They haven't entered their eternal form, but they are basically aware of what their eternal form is. So externally, rendering service as a regular sadhaka, internally learning how to render service in that eternal position which they've just become aware of. Now, Srila Prabhupada, in order to illustrate this point, that here we're talking about two bodies at once, the external body, the sadhaka rupa, and the internal body, the form, whatever the form of the relationship with the Lord. So Srila Prabhupada gives the example of a coconut. Coconuts, they grow on the coconut palm tree and they're green. But then if you take it down and just put it there, gradually, well, even when it's green, if you've been to India, to Mayapur, they cut them open and there's liquid inside. And you drink the liquid. It's extremely popular. Extremely popular. The dob juice. They call them dobs. But now, if you don't drink the liquid and you don't open it, you just leave it, it's green. So gradually it sort of ripens and ripens until it becomes like, if you see them in some shops in Durban, they sell coconuts. Normally they're brown and sort of a little hairy, like we use in the yagyas. It's a dry, fully matured coconut. And inside the shell, when it reaches that dry state, there is a white sort of, you could say, flesh inside. And as the coconut becomes drier and drier and drier, the flesh dries and it shrinks. It shrinks because all the water's drying up. And so the flesh where the water was, it shrinks because the water's going out. Eventually, it reaches the point where that flesh inside separates from the shell. And at that point, you can shake the whole thing and you'll hear inside like rattling. You follow what I mean? I don't know if you've had that experience. But when it dries sufficiently, that flesh inside separates from the shell and you can rattle it. And you've got like two coconuts. You've got the shell and you've got the inner thing, and they're independent of each other. So similarly, as the devotee in Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti is practicing, learning how to serve Krishna in the eternal relationship, then gradually as they get into it more and more and more, then the spiritual body separates from the gross body internally. And the devotee completely identifies and completely sees themselves as that, whether it's a gopi or a cowherd boy or a parental devotee or whatever. Yeah, in other words, it becomes clear, crystal clear. So that's what happens in Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. Yeah. Here's another verse, the following verse. Actually, the inhabitants of Vrindavan are very dear to Krishna. If one wants to engage in spontaneous loving service, he must follow the inhabitants of Vrindavan. and constantly engage in devotional service within his mind. So, in other words, Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti is an internal mental or meditational process. It is not an external process. You know, and for those who have Vaikuntha relationships, they also go through the same experience, of course, of gradually realizing what their eternal relationship is in Vaikuntha, but it's not intense like in Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. It's not so intense at all. Yeah. And they don't so much go through a process of learning how to serve in that way as those who are on the way to Vrindavan, Goloka Vrindavan, as they go through in terms of the sadhana, the Raganuga sadhana. Okay. So, yes. So like this, and it's done, as we said, under the supervision and guidance internally of an eternal associate through revelation. One is getting guidance from an eternal associate. So, okay, let us carry on. We've just covered the first paragraph, basically. How are you doing in Facebook land, devotees? Are you doing okay? Just give us a yes or a no. We'll go on to the second paragraph, and it's a warning. First of all, in the first paragraph, we get the idea, what is this Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti? Next thing, we get a warning, watch out, watch out. So, well, anyway, let's go through the paragraph. So, first of all, Prabhupada says that there is eagerness. This is one of the great sort of manifestations, symptoms, signs, or just what happens to a devotee who, thank you, Haribol, thank you very much. Happens to a devotee when they start getting this realization, wow, I have an eternal relationship as whatever it is. But then the rag starts manifesting. And so an eagerness, not yet on the level of those who are rag atmic, but it starts to show itself. So therefore Prabhupada says in the second paragraph that there is eagerness to follow in the footsteps of the denizens of Raja. But, and this is a big but, we must always remember that this eagerness to follow in the footsteps of the Brijbasis is not possible unless one is freed from material contamination. Right. In other words, if we're still, got quite a bit of material desire hanging around, afflicting us from time to time, we're not going to get this realization of what our eternal relationship is. And so let's continue. It's the warning. In following the regulative principles of devotional service, there is a stage called anatha nivritti, which means the disappearance of all material contamination. Sometimes someone is found imitating such devotional love, but factually, he's not freed from anathas or unwanted habits. So in other words, the sort of what that's sort of hinting at, or not exactly hinting, but indirectly telling us, is that no one can practice Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti if at least they must, or they can't do it if they have not successfully gone through anatha nivritti and at the least come to the level of nishta, at the very least, because going through anatha nivritti means you've still got your anathas, although you're working on getting rid of them, which is good, but they're still there. There is still work to be done. So maybe on the level of nishta, Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti might start, although maybe not so likely, maybe on the level of ruchi, but definitely on the level of asakti. So it has been seen that a so-called devotee proclaims himself a follower of Nanda, Yashoda, or the gopis, while at the same time his abominable attraction for mundane sex life is visible. Haribol. Such a manifestation of divine love is mere imitation and has no value. When one is actually spontaneously attracted to the loving principles of the gopis, or of the parents, or of the friends, there will be found no trace of any mundane contamination in his character. You follow? So therefore it's only after some time in Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, progressing nicely, that the possibility of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti starting might arise. Okay, and then the next paragraph 3, again it's a warning. Therefore, in the beginning, everyone should strictly follow the regulative principles of devotional service, according to the injunctions of the scriptures and the spiritual master. Only after the stage of liberation from material contamination can one actually aspire to follow in the footsteps of the devotees in Vrindavan. Is that clear? Yeah. Let's hope so. So we go on to the 4th paragraph, and it's developing the subject further. When one is actually liberated from material contamination, means beyond anatha nivritti. Anyway, when the curtains open. We will carry on for another 5 or several minutes because we lost that amount of time at the beginning. Okay, so Shri Shri Radha Radhanath, Shri Giri Govardhan, Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. All right. So now chapter 4, developing these ideas further. When one is actually liberated from material contamination, he can always remember an eternal devotee in Vrindavan in order to love Krishna in the same capacity And developing such an aptitude, one will always live in Vrindavan, even within his mind. In other words, living in Vrindavan, if one is on this level, which, anyway, if one's on this level, living in Vrindavan is recommended. But if for whatever reason one cannot or one just is not living in Vrindavan, then one can live in Vrindavan in one's mind. Because this practice of remembering that type of devotional service in Vrindavan, that's going on, of course, within the mind. Yes. And so Prabhupada explains that if possible, go and live in Vrindavan. If it's not possible, you can meditate, Prabhupada says, you can meditate anywhere upon living in that situation. But the thing is, wherever you are physically, you must always think about life in Vrajadam and about following in the footsteps of a particular devotee in the service of the Lord. We have a question here, devotees, for our Bhakti Shastri students. Yeah, it's on this point of living in Vrindavan or not, or living in Vrindavan within the mind. And we're going to read a few sentences from Caitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, chapter 16, verse 281, purport. Madhya 16, 281. So Prabhupada says, presently, the members of the Hare Krishna movement throughout the world live in materially opulent cities such as London, New York, Los Angeles, Paris, Moscow, Zurich, Stockholm, and Chatsworth. No, wait a minute. No, Chatsworth's not there. However, we are satisfied with following in the footsteps of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and other acharyas, because we live in the temples of Radha Krishna and continuously hold Hari Nam Sankirtan, the chanting of Hare Krishna. We consequently live in Vrindavan and nowhere else. Okay, so I hope you noted the verse number. The question is going to be, how do you live in Vrindavan and nowhere else? Okay, so that's a question. Let's go on to paragraph number 5. And the theme there is something like I've said, don't make a display of, don't show off. Don't make a display of yourself. So Prabhupada here says in this paragraph 5, it begins, a devotee who is actually advanced in Krishna consciousness, who is constantly engaged in devotional service, should not manifest himself, even though he has attained perfection. Yes, but rather, as we've already mentioned, that's a Raganuga devotee performs devotional service on 2 levels, one external, one internal. The external never changes. You keep chanting your rounds, attending Mangal Arati, reading the books, doing some regular service. Those things don't change, at least to by far the greater degree. But internally, the Raganuga is going on internally. So externally, the devotee should make a point, basically, of acting like, well, say a neophyte, but like a regular sadhaka, regular sadhaka. And that's what Prabhupada did. Prabhupada was on that level, and he revealed that in different ways on a number of occasions. But externally, he was like a super staunch regular devotee, sadhaka. That was Prabhupada. Yes. Let's see, where are we here? Activities in devotional service under regulative principles must be followed even by the pure devotee. But when he realizes his actual position and relationship with the Lord, he can, along with the discharging of regulative service, think with himself of the Lord under the guidance of a particular associate of the Lord, and develop his transcendental sentiments in following that associate. Oh, Stos Lucilis. He disappeared. Okay. Well, hang on a second. Turn on the sound here. Hare Krishna. The verse. Okay. Yeah. So the verse for the Bhakti Shastri, Caitanya Charitamrita, Madhya-lila, Shesnatset, Dwesti Vusam Diset Adin. 16, chapter, verse 281. Okay. Dwesti Vusam Diset Adin. Okay, so we'll stop here and we'll carry on. Aha. Yes, a question has arisen.
Sometimes we have spoken that we have one who has like spiritual guidance or what we call spirit guidance. In terms of that you are not alone, there are those who are higher and who are looking after you. You say these are the personal associates of the Lord who know your constitutional position in the spiritual world, and they are always basically trying to shelter you and guide you even before you come to that level of self-realization.
Oh, I see. Okay, so the question is that we hear, just some people, not just devotees, but some people talk about how people have sort of like a guardian angel, even in some cases. Someone is overseeing us from up there somewhere and helping us along on our spiritual path or on our path in life. This idea is there. You do get it in certain circles. So the question is this, or is the person who, because here in Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, you are being guided and helped by an eternal associate. You actually start communicating with an eternal associate directly or indirectly, and they start giving help. So the question, as I've understood it, is, does that person who helps you in Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti help you before in the earlier stages. All right. You know, generally, it's not put like that. One is helped by the spiritual master, at least while one is practicing, before coming to that level. And when one comes to that level, sometimes the eternal associate who helps you is the spiritual master, but sometimes it's another person who starts helping you along with the spiritual master. So it's not just like, so generally the idea is it's a different person. Generally, that's the idea. Hare Krishna. Okay, so we will end here and carry on with this very interesting subject tomorrow night. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.